we decided to take a listen to the brand new album by Metric, Formentera #2. I guess this is a sequel, right? Oh yeah, this is a
It
sequel.
is a sequel.
Oh, okay. Formentera II is the 9th studio album by Canadian indie rock band Metric. It was released on October 13, 2023. It is a sequel to their previous album, Formentera 1, released in July 2022. Metric initially began work on this album during the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic before completing the album in early 2023. So they probably worked on both these albums at the same time, but this one was the second part of it. So, Eric, your thoughts on this album?
I've always been a Metric fan. And in fact, like I've always been like, for those of you who've listened to this podcast for a while, I've always been very fond of Canadian music and I promote it. And I think it's great because we do have a lot of good music. Um, I really like this band, even though I would say half their catalog is, but so the other half is really good and worth listening. Now, Formentera is an island in Spain, uh, or like off of Spain. I think it's south of Ibiza. And the story is when they made this album, they were in like Shaw studio or whatever, and like in Vancouver here, and because Shaw is it's like Telus or Rogers or whatever your cell phone company or internet and TV is, and they saw this ad for it was just like go to Formentera, Spain, and enjoy this vacation, and it was kind of during the brink of COVID or like the starting of it. So Emily, the singer, had this idea. It's like, oh, like obviously a lot of artists, what they do in lockdown, they wrote music, right? Funny how that happens. So Formentera was supposed to be this album that was about the pandemic and surviving the pandemic and living through it and just being isolated. So the first album was really good, and it was very ambitious to open up with a song that was almost 11 minutes in the first Formentera, and it was a really good song. It was Doom Scroller. So it was almost like talking about how like everybody kind of like I could see it here in BC, like, but when COVID hit, everybody was like, well, what am I going to do? I'm just going to watch my favorite streams, or I'm just going to scroll Facebook or whatever, right? So Doom Scroller was this idea of a song that you have this society that's so heavily influenced by social media that it got to a point where you're isolated in your home. Only so much of your entertainment can be actually filled with that social media, and that it was like within that it's the doom scroller thing, right? It's like, okay, well, I've done this for a day, now what? Right? So it was a cool concept album, and I can tell that this album was definitely recorded during the pandemic as well, but it just didn't have the same effect as the first album did. I felt like if they were going to release both, they should have just released both of them at the same time.
Okay.
There were some good songs on this that I like whatchamacallit, I have to bring up the album again here. I thought Days of Oblivion, it started off terrible, but the ending was sick. Like that whole, like I would say half the, like from the half end, like where the bridge comes in to the end, I was like, this is a cool song actually. And it had that like kind of like bass groove in the middle of it, which was cool. But I felt like the ending half of this album just wasn't good. I just felt it kind of like was almost just like, I just smoked a bag of marijuana and this is what my mind is producing right now. So first part of the album was good. Second part I wasn't really a fan of. Whereas from a concept out, because like Formentera was supposed to be like this paradise, like dreaming about this paradise in this time where you're kind of like on standstill, right? So the first album really kind of like hit, especially when I found out that it was written during the pandemic. I didn't know that there was going to be a second to this. But I just feel like they're almost like grasping at straws for this one.
Yeah, that's always the danger of doing a double album essentially. Like
Mm,
it gets a little long in the tooth where it feels like you're just running out of ideas and just like trying to fill it up with two albums worth of music. Um so yeah, just so that everyone's aware, you have listened to the first
mhm,
Formentera album and now the second. I have not listened to the first one, so we're coming from a sort of a different starting point. When I listened to this album, I honestly was just bored through a good
mhm,
majority of it. Especially, and I do agree with you. The second half was like worse than the first half, because the first half was like, okay, this is some like nice music, but there wasn't anything there that was like, oh, this is really really good. I do agree with you.
mhm,
Days of Oblivion, the ending was like pretty sick, um, but like for the most part, when I listened to this, I was just like, there's no real like hook here. There's nothing that's really that musically interesting. A lot of it is very synthy. Um, there's some cool bass groups and stuff, but it's like I was mostly bored listening to this album.
mhm. And I would have to agree with you too. And like you said, coming out with a double album is risky at the beginning. And I feel like these were just filler songs, and it was almost like the band was just like, you know what, we have these songs, we might as well just release a second one.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to release a concept album, especially a concept album, because um, I do believe that for metric fans that just like their music, like their hits, I don't think that they would like uh, Formentera, the
Mm.
first the first album, because it's like starting off with an 11-minute song, or it's like 10, 11 minute song, like that already weeds out some of your audience, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, oh my god, the song's still playing. Whereas people like us, we appreciate those long songs because it's like definitely telling a story at that point. It's
Yeah.
not like they're
Yeah.
just like, this is the song that never ends kind of thing. So I just feel like it was kind of just this album is easily forgotten in their catalog,
Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
which is
It's
yeah.
yeah. It's unfortunate because like I've never listened to a Metric album. I've barely listened to any Metric other than like it comes on the radio and it's just in the background. But I know that they've been around for a decent amount of time, and this is their ninth studio album. So like, I was like
Mhm,
hoping it'd be a good album, but I don't know. These songs just didn't do it for me. Granted, like stylistically, this is not music I would listen to. It's a bit too synth
mhm.
heavy for me, without being like having like that hard edge to it. If I'm gonna
Mhm,
listen to synth based music, it needs to be like a bit more hardcore than what this is. It's a bit too laid back, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much to say on it just because I don't have a favorite song on this album because it all sort of just blended together for me.
mhm. I think that you would like the first one
The first one, okay.
more so than this, because it just flows really well. Whereas this one, it just, like you said, it was boring. It was a bit boring.
Yeah.
I still think that if, like, metric wise, and for all the metric fans that will probably comment and tell me that I'm an idiot, I think, and I know they're going to hate me for saying this, but I think Fantasies is their best album, and that's the one with Give Me Sympathy, which is their most famous song. Gold Girls and Guns, or Gold Guns and Girls. That one, that's probably one of my favorite metric songs. Uh, but that album is kick ass. But it's their earlier stuff. Metric, their earlier stuff is great. I never really been a big fan of their later stuff. However,
Mm,
Formentera number one is way better than this.
mm, okay.
So I
Uh,
don't think they should have released this. I really don't think they
just
should
stay
have
in the
released this.
vault. Just release it as like B sides later on, once like the
Mhm.
greatest hits album.
For those who are like true metric fans, that my favorite band in the world is metric, like they probably disagree with me, but I do think Formentera number one had more of an impact than this.
Mm. All right, Eric. Final thoughts, rating. What are you gonna give this one?
Sadly, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Yeah.
4 out of 10. Wow.
Like, yes, it's very synth heavy, but I think that Metric does the synths very well.
Yeah,
So,
that's their style. Yeah.
this is definitely their style, and it's definitely a Metric album. But yeah, no. So
for me, it's just straight down the middle of 5 out of 10 because, like, I think it's when I put it on and just put in the background, there wasn't anything overly offensive about it. I thought it was like, okay, it's cool, but it was a boring album, but it did sound good. Like everything was recorded well, produced well. Just like there was no proper like chorus that I could really distinguish that I came out of it like humming at the end of the day, or any sort of melody line that I can remember after listening to it. So it's a nice album, but it's a boring album. So it's straight down the middle for me for a 5 out of 10.
There you go.
All right. So that was our discussion on Formentera II by Metric. For those of you following along with us every single week, the next album we are going to be listening to and discussing, which surprisingly I'm pretty excited for.
I am too.
It is the brand new the Rolling Stones album, Hackney Diamonds. Let's see what these old geezers are up to. I honestly, if you asked me a week ago, the Rolling Stones are, I think we discussed this too, the Rolling Stones releasing a new album, I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like this, there's no way this is going to be good. They're so old. But I've started to like listen to clips of it, and I saw that clip of Lady Gaga and them doing like a club show together. I was like, this actually might be good.
Yeah, I thoroughly agree with you, my friend. Thoroughly agree with you.
Who knows? Maybe next week we'll come back and be like, this was the shittiest album I've ever listened to.
Yeah,
but
this is awful. Yeah.
But I am somewhat excited to listen to a new Rolling Stones album, which is a first for me. Okay, perfect. So yeah, that is the podcast for this week. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. This is the Crossroads Music Podcast here at twitch.tv/the Crossroads Music Podcast. We're live here every 10 p.m. ET, 7 p.m. PT. Catch us on Spotify, Apple Music, all the places where you get your podcasts. We have a YouTube channel too. Join the Discord. There's a lot of places where you can yell at us and give your comments. We did have a few comments on the YouTube channel this past week, but I'm just saving it up. We'll probably talk about it next time. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And I think that's it. Eric, any closing thoughts, remarks, words of wisdom to close this whole thing off?
No, thanks for chasing dragonflies, for rating the cast here, and give us your critics, whether you disagree with us heavily or not. We really appreciate it at the end. This is a safe place to talk about music, everybody.
It's a safe place? I don't think this is a safe place to talk about music.
It's a trap.
It's definitely a trap.
No, keep rocking on, keep listening to music. It's what drives everybody in life. So yeah.
All right, perfect. We will catch you all next time. Thanks for tuning in, and see you all.